Hey class, Mr. Henry here and with another one of these awesome videos. I'm at a workshop today, so I thought I would leave you a video about today's lesson, which is finding the midpoint of a line segment. So far this unit we've talked about line segments. Yesterday we talked about circles. So this will be a little more related to what we were doing the day before yesterday with line segments. So hopefully you are fresh on that and have done all your homework for that. Let's get right into it then. If you're following along on your handout, this should be your first question there. So find the midpoint of the following pairs of numbers. So here we're just talking of one-dimensional number line. And let's look at our first question. I think most of you will be able to, hopefully all of you, will be able to figure this one out. Find the midpoint between 2 and 4. So what point is halfway between 2 and 4? And, well, obviously, halfway between 2 and 4 is going to be 3. Right, 0 and 5, maybe you have to think a little more about it. What is halfway between 0 and 5? Right here, we have a bit of an odd scenario, so it's not going to be a whole number. We're going to have something halfway between 0 and 5, which I'm sure most of you can see is going to be 2.5 or 2.5. But let's look at one where I've taken some of the numbers away, so it might be a little trickier. Let's try 3 and 9. So what is halfway between 3 and 9? I mean, it's not that challenging of a question, but I took some of these numbers away. What if these numbers were even further away and you weren't able to just imagine those numbers in your head? What would you do? And so the easy way to find a halfway point between two numbers is just to take the average, right? So if I were to take the average of the numbers 9 and 3, I would do 3 plus 9 divided by 2, so that would be 12 divided by 2, or 6. The halfway point between 9 and 3 is going to be 6. Try that for 7 and 10. Hit pause, figure out the midpoint, and then hit play again. Okay, so for 7 and 10, you would take the same methods. So 7 plus 10 divided by 2, that is 17 over 2, which is really 8.5. So what happens now if I have something two-dimensional? So say I want to find the midpoint of the line segment formed between the endpoints 2, 4 and negative 4, 6. So let me just take a second. I'm going to put these on my grid. So here is point A, and point B is at negative 4 and 6. So up here. So I'm trying to find the point halfway between those 2 points. So somewhere over here, I think we might be able to make an approximation, but let's not do that. Let's see if we can be as exact as we can. When we were finding the length of a line segment, we talked about Pythagorean theorem. And so if I kind of draw that same triangle here, I can kind of see the right triangle that would make up those line segments. If I'm looking for a halfway point between 2 points that are not on the same plane, right, or on the same number line, I need to look halfway between their x coordinates, right? So halfway between their x coordinates would be somewhere here, and halfway across their y coordinates, which would be here. So my midway point would be there, halfway between the x's, halfway between the y's. And we just said that to find the halfway point, we just have to take the average. So if I want to do that calculation-wise, so for my x, I'm going to have 2 minus 4 divided by 2, right, to take the average between 2 and negative 4, and that will give me negative 1. For y, same thing. I'm going to take these y values, 4 and 6, and take the average. So 4 plus 6 divided by 2, 4 plus 6 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. So I have that my midpoint is going to be -1 and 5. Right, so really the same concept as when we had the one-dimensional line, except I have to find the halfway point for x and the halfway point for y. So let's take a look at the next question. Or actually, before we do that, let's talk a bit about what a general formula for a midpoint of a line segment might look like. If we're talking about a midpoint, we're talking about an actual xy coordinate. So I'm not going to have like a formula y equals something something. I'm going to have an actual coordinate here. Right, to find the x, we said we were taking the average. If we're talking about 2 points, and we've been using the terminology x1 and x2, if I'm trying to find the average between those, I would say x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and that would be the average between the x points. Same for the y, I'll have y1 plus y2 divided by 2, and that will be the average between the midpoint. And so really, that is just formula for the midpoint of a line segment, right? Average of the x values, average of the y values together as a coordinate. Okay, now let's take that and see if we can apply it to some questions. Without sketching, determine the midpoint for each line segment. So why don't you pause the video now, see if you can figure these out on your own, and then hit play so you can check your answers. You can use the formula that we just talked about in solving these. All right, so here's our answer for 3A. You can see that I took the x-coordinates 4 and 10, found the average, 4 plus 10 divided by 2, which was 7. And for B, for Y, took the average as well between -1 and 6. So -1 plus 6 divided by 2, which was 5/2, and I just left as a fraction there, which is totally fine. For B, exact same thing. I'm taking the average of the x values and the average of the y values. So for the x values, I've got 3 and -4. So if I'm trying to add 3 and -4, that's really 3 minus 4/2. For the y values, that's -1 minus 6/2. Right, 3 minus 4, so -1/2. -1 minus 6, -7/2. Right, so both are fractions, and that is totally fine. Okay, let's look at a slightly more challenging one here. This question has quite a bit to do, and so you can see there's a lot of room on your page for this question. We have a quadrilateral, meaning a shape with 4 sides, has these 4 vertices, and we want to find the perimeter of the figure whose vertices are the midpoints of the sides of the quadrilateral. So let's say we have some sort of quadrilateral, a shape with 4 sides. It has those vertices, P, Q, R, and S, but what we are more interested in is these midpoints. So we are trying to find the perimeter of the figure whose vertices are the midpoints. So that's this inner shape here. We are trying to find the perimeter. So obviously to find the perimeter, we need to find each of the sides and then add them all together. So in order to do that, we actually have to find 4 midpoints, then find 4 line segments, and then add them all together. So this question is quite a bit of work. So hit pause and maybe try and find the midpoints first, and then you can check in with me to see if you got them all correct. Then hit pause again and try to find the line segments, the length of the line segments, and add them together and find the perimeter. All right, hit pause. Alrighty, so there are the midpoints of the lines. So you can double check your answers to see if you got those all correct. If you did, you can hit pause again and now try and find the lengths of all those, the 4 line segments. All right, hit pause. Okay, so across the bottom here, I found all 4 of these, the lengths of the line segments. 2 of them were root 26 and the other 2 were 5. So that worked out quite nicely. I guess this is some sort of parallelogram. 2 sides are the same and the other 2 sides are the same. So the perimeter is going to be 5 plus root 26 plus root 26, which I guess you could simplify to 10 plus 2 root 26, right? I have 2 root 26's, so I have 2 times root 26. 10 plus root 26 would be the perimeter. All right, so that was kind of a long question, but a pretty good one because it used quite a few of the skills we've learned so far. The next question here probably won't take as long, but is probably a little more mentally challenging. So take a look at question 5. We've got one endpoint of the line segment AB, so -2 and 4. Then we have the midpoint, which is -1, 7, and we're trying to find the other coordinate B. So let's kind of just make a rough sketch here. So we have A, which is going to be -2 and 4. We've got a line segment. We don't know B, but we have this midpoint, which we'll call, well, which we know the coordinates of -1 and 7. So we are trying to find B. So I want you guys to think about this on your own, maybe discuss it with a partner, see if you can come up with how you would solve that. Keep in mind, right, the average between the x's is going to be the x coordinate of the midpoint. And same with the y. The average of those 2 y coordinates should be that 7. See if you can figure that out with a partner, and then hit play and watch me take up the solution. Okay, press pause. Okay, so I'm going to look at each of these separately. I know that the x part of the, or the x coordinate of the midpoint is the average of the x coordinate of the 2 points, and same with the y. So let's fill in what we know here. For x, I know that the midpoint coordinate for x is -1, and I know that it's an average between -2 plus this other x, which I don't actually know. Right, this is now an equation with one variable, so it should be pretty easy to solve. Right, to get rid of this 2, we multiply both sides by 2. That leaves me with -2 equals -2 plus x2. Right, if -2 plus x2 is -2, then obviously x2 has to be 0. So we've got the x. And we do the exact same thing with y. So y coordinate of the midpoint is 7, and it's an average of 4 and this other number, which we don't know. So same thing, I'm going to multiply by 2, so I have 14 is 4 plus y2. Right, if 4 plus y2 is 14, then what's missing there is 10. So y squared is 10. Or sorry, y2 is 10. So that means b is going to be equal to 0 and 10. Right, those will be the coordinates. So it's still not that tricky, right? Just keeping in mind that the midpoint is an average of the x coordinates and the y coordinates put together. Finding the other point when we know the midpoint isn't really that challenging because we know how to do simple operations like this, multiply by 2, and solve simple equations. So take a look at the homework questions, which I have posted on the weekly schedule. and try those ones out of your textbook. And I will see you guys on